Hey everybody, Antoni here with a review of Need for Speed, which was shown at the CineStar movie theaters at Potsdamer Platz. The film was directed by Scott Waugh. It was produced by John Gatins, Patrick O'Brien, and Mark Surian. It was written by George Gatins alongside John Gatins, and it was based on the Need for Speed video game franchise released by Electronic Arts. It stars Aaron Paul, from Breaking Bad fame, Scott Mescudi, Dominic Cooper, Imogen Poots, Ramon Rodriguez, Michael Keaton, Rami Malek, Dakota Johnson, and Harrison Gilbertson. Now, I've never really played the Need for Speed video games as a kid, but I've played other racing games like Running Wild and a little bit of Gran Torino for good measure, mostly playing them on my local arcade. And I basically went into this movie with very low expectations because basically it's a racing film. It's not really my cup of tea. I'm not saying I despise it or anything. I think they're okay. But this film is easily comparable to the likes of the Fast and the Furious franchise and many other racing movies in general. So, after watching this film, I have to say, it was pretty decent. Now, story wise, like I said, it's not that original, not that fresh, nor anything unique or anything that's compelling. It's almost like the Fast and the Furious franchise. We have the main hero and the main rival, some shit happens, and then they have a race. This premise is almost like Never Back Down, where the main person is in a beatdown with this cocky son of a bitch rival, and this also kind of is comparable to the Karate Kid as well. So basically, the story isn't really anything fresh or even original, but the racing scenes definitely make up for that. They basically compensate for the shortcomings in the story. And sure, there are some good character relationships in this film, which I'll get to later. But it's safe to say is it's this. Even though the story isn't really anything original, it makes up for it by its intense action scenes, mostly in the races, and some good characters. Now, since this is a racing movie and an action movie as well, the cinematography really has to be that crisp and clean. Sure, there are some moments, actually, there are several moments in which the handheld camera movements were kind of jarring, mostly because it was very shaky, and it basically moves at such a very fast pace. So the people behind the filmmaking process definitely really have to be consistent. And for an action film, I definitely felt that it was really solid, but they kind of need to do themselves the honest favor and make not so many shaky cam effects and all that. And the visual effects were quite good. So yes, the cinematography is actually solid all throughout, but the shaky cam definitely needs to stop every once in a while. Now the characters aren't really anything spectacular, but they're pretty likable all the same. The main character, his name is Toby, is basically our main protagonist, who is basically an underdog type of character. He has a passion for racing, and he is pretty much the guy who will always stay close to his friends. And he's also quite aloof as well, especially when meeting new people. There's nothing fantastic about him, nor is there anything bad about him. He's simply okay. He's a decent character, though nothing anything new or even unique. He's actually okay as a character. And then we have Julia, who is pretty much a sarcastic, very snarky British chick. She basically starts off as quite snooty, quite sarcastic, but later, as the film progresses, she basically becomes a lot more outgoing and a lot more daring and a lot more fleshed out. Sure, in terms of Toby, we don't really know what made him this type of person that he is. Sure, he's loyal to his friends, and that's pretty much all I can say. But with Julia, she's definitely a fun character because she is pretty sarcastic, and at times she can be very outgoing. Now, the most entertaining character for me really has to be ah, Maverick. I absolutely love the way he was able to keep the humor of this film going. Every line delivery that he makes is just so hilarious, and there are times that I had a chuckle to every line that Maverick says. And then we have Joe Peck and Finn, who are a couple of good characters, but there's nothing to write home about them. But with um, Joe's case, or I think it was Finn. Yeah, Finn's case, he basically exits the building that he was working in, and while he was doing his typing inventory in this office, and he walks out naked with only his socks on, and I was like, what the hell did I just watch? I was like screaming in my head, what the hell, what the hell, what the hell? But still, it was pretty weird, if not hilarious, but yeah, it was kind of weird. But other than that, these two were basically just the friends and nothing more. But there is one character that I absolutely love to hate, and that is none other than Dino Brewster. Now, why do I love to hate this character so much? Just why? First of all, he's a smug ass snake. Seriously, he is such a smug person that every moment that I see him on screen, I would really like to punch the crap out of him. I mean, the way that he tortures Toby in such a psychological manner is just whoa, what a douchebag he was. And he's actually a pretty formidable foe, but he's just so made of douche. I mean, he's pretty much the opposite of Toby, who is loyal, whereas with Dino, he's pretty much your standard smug ass jerk villain. And then we have Anita. I have to say, even though she doesn't have that much time on screen, she's a pretty good character. I mean, sure, we do see that there is a good amount of chemistry with Toby and Anita, but other than that, she's just pretty much there. And as for little Pete, initially he didn't really have that much an effect on me until his death scene, in which I thought was just quite tragic. So yes, the characters are only okay. They're not the best, nor are they the worst. They're just simply okay, with the only standouts being Julia and Maverick. Now the acting is pretty decent as well. Aaron Paul, who a lot of people know as one of the main leads of Breaking Bad, does a pretty solid job as Toby. He was able to portray his doubts and his aloof nature pretty well. Imogen Poots really did a fantastic job as Julia, and I'm actually planning to see her in A Long Way Down, probably somewhere in early April. And I have to say that she does a pretty good job portraying all of Julia's snarky nature, and she does a very solid job with such a fun character like Julia. And we have Scott Mescudi as Maverick. Oh my goodness. He was just a riot in that role. I thought he was just absolutely fun to watch. Then we have Dominic Cooper as Dino Brewster, I thought he was pretty good. He was able to make this piece of shit of a character, Brewster, come to life. I mean, he does a pretty good job in portraying Dino's piece of shit nature that I hate so much. But he's a very captivating actor. He's actually very captivating in this role. It's not one of his best because I haven't really seen that much of Cooper's work, but it's definitely good. It was definitely a good portrayal of such a piece of garbage character that I would like to punch in the face if I ever met him in real life. And then we have Michael Keaton as Monarch. And I have to say, Monarch is another likable character in the film, mostly because of his one liners and the way that he was able to keep up the energy of this film. Michael Keaton as Monarch, I thought he was very good. His line delivery was very solid, and he did a pretty good job in making such a great use of this character. Dakota Johnson as Anita, even though she had a pretty minute role, she was still able to portray all of that innocence. The same thing I can say with Harrison Gilbertson as Little Pete. Sure, his role was quite minute, but he was able to play that slightly punkish nature of Little Pete. The music, it's nothing really special, mostly in the background music, but there was this one piece of music that kind of almost reduced me to tears, and it was basically in the climax, basically before the end, where Toby basically wins the race but ends up getting arrested alongside Dino in the process. I thought that was the only music that stood out for just how emotional it was, but other than that, the music in this film wasn't really anything special. It was basically hip hop and a little bit of pop and rock. Man, that's just pretty much it. So overall, this is a pretty decent film based on a video game franchise. At least I'm that relieved that it's not like Tekken the Motion Picture, Street Fighter the movie, the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and at least it's not like that Mortal Kombat live action movie. Because I've seemed to notice that movies based on video game franchises definitely tend to flop at the box office. And as I've researched, this film does have a good success at the box office so far. So, yes, is it better than those aforementioned movies that I mentioned, like Tekken the Motion Picture and that Mortal Kombat live action movie? Yes. Is it any better than other films like Street Fighter 2, the animated movie, which has been praised by a lot of fans? Not entirely, because the thing of the matter is, like I said, the story is pretty much not that fresh. And to quote Lava Buster in his review of Kanan, it's basically a Me Too series. And it's basically a Me Too series because it is almost like Fast and the Furious. But still, there are some decent action moments, and some of the characters are definitely pretty likable. And the music, with one standout being the song that played in the climax, I thought was pretty good. So overall, I'm gonna give this film a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Sure, I know this rating was quite low, but like I said, it's really nothing anything new for me. But it makes up for it in terms of its decent characters, decent action scenes, and that one song in the end. And it's well acted all throughout. So, if you're a fan of the racing movie genre and you've already seen Fast and the Furious and you'd like to have a lot more adrenaline in terms of what movie you want to watch next, then by all means go ahead and watch Need for Speed. If you're the type of person who would rather stick to the Fast and the Furious franchise and or even not really interested in seeing any racing films, then by all means skip it. But still, if you're in the mood for a few action scenes along the way, then just go ahead and watch it. Basically, this is a watch at your own mileage type of film. It's nothing anything new, but it does promise some decent characters and a few good thrills here and there. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune into my next review, which is going to be later this evening, where I'll be reviewing The 100-Year-Old, which is a new Swedish film that came out this year. And it'll be shown at the same movie theaters about 2 hours from now. So until then, see you later.